Hi, everyone. Happy Halloween. Today, we're going to be talking to Helevorn about her story, Outlaws, which is a new story that she's been working on alongside, Lucky Wolf and the Sons of Disobedience. So,
Hi.
Helevorn, maybe we can start talking about what Outlaws is and what the plot generally is and what the historical background of the story will be.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. So, Outlaws is the story of a hard time in the history of Romania in the 18th century, when the country is under Ottoman influence, pillaged from outside by raids and from within by corruption. More and more people take the way of the woods to run from the law, forming groups of haiduks, as they are called, a term borrowed from Slavic languages, or outlaws who steal from the rich and try to protect the peasantry from Turkish raids. Um, Two Roma siblings, Narcisa and Murgu, save the life of boyar Amza Vidrashku, who is running from the authorities. Years later, Amza has become the leader of an outlaw group, and fate brings the trio together again for new adventures. So this would be the summary of the plot. As you can see, this is a very different historical background than the ones in my previous stories, because I usually write stories set in the Middle Ages, especially in Scandinavia and medieval England. So this is quite different from that, but at the same time, it is closer to home because I am, well, Romanian. So it is pretty weird to write about your own history. Also, just to introduce, because it's Halloween, I'm wearing. Well, I've tried to wear the costume of one of the main characters from my story, which is Narcisa, the Roma girl that I introduced before. Um, so about the historical background. Well, this final years of the 18th century, politics was chaotic in Romania, or Wallachia, as it was called, because it was under the influence of the Ottoman Empire. So it was obliged to pay taxes to this great force. Romanian princes had little autonomy and they did everything in their power to keep their throne. The rule of many of them lasted only a few months, some even being decapitated by the Roman emperor's the Ottoman emperor's decree. So they relied on the boyars, who also wanted to keep their status in these times of uncertainty, and they often did unorthodox things for that by preying on the commoners. So documents record deeds of great social injustice taking place in this time, like boyars making taxes higher on their own accord and sending their militia to torture people who couldn't pay, women and children included. Also, the Roma people are slaves at this time. A few years before my story takes place, this part of Romania was the scene of a war between Austrians, Russians, and Turks. So these great powers met and fought in the middle, depleting the region of resources, and soldiers from all sides were scattering to pillage the Romanian countryside. The Great Ottoman Empire was nearing its twilight as well, so there were some military leaders who turned rogue, particularly one of them who settled in Vidin, nowadays northern Bulgaria, just by the Romanian border across the Danube. And these rogue Turkish armies would cross into the Romanian countryside to pillage as well. The documents record that when the Turks were coming, entire villages were left deserted, with peasants taking whatever they could carry from their own homes and running to hide into the woods. And as if this political and military unrest wasn't enough, there were earthquakes, great fires in the capital and in the city of Craiova, which is the region where my story is set, and droughts in summers, very cold winters, famine, and even an outburst of the plague. So well, it was a really tumultuous time. Peasantry was extremely poor and owned very little property, and many of them were living in hovels made out of earth and half dug into the earth, actually, so as not to have them burned down by pillagers. Aristocracy, on the other hand, was trying to keep up their high life to the point that princes had to give laws to forbid the import of luxury items from the West. So the boyars were importing carriages, clothes, jewelry, whatever, and they were gambling very high sums at high profile clubs, spending their days in coffee houses and restaurants. So the differences between aristocracy and common people was extremely high. So it's little wonder that the boyars at this time are depicted as greedy and corrupt by contemporary literature. So more and more people, mostly peasants, were disgruntled. So they started running from the law, becoming outlaws. And these groups of outlaws would often pillage boyars and merchants crossing the roads into main cities. 19th century Romanian literature is very rich in stories depicting these outlaws in a very romantic, idealized fashion. And in these stories, Romanian peasants are always presented as martyrs. They are good people who suffer a lot. And these outlaws are portrayed as heroes or maybe thugs with the heart of gold, that trope. And boyars are portrayed as villains, and so are the Ottomans. So now we finally come back to my story. In Outlaws, I tried to give a hint of that, but at the same time, I try to steer clear from these idealized depictions because there is no social category that is good, no category that is evil, but people who are living in very difficult and uncertain times, people who are frustrated, and people who are essentially, I think, rigid and superstitious because this is what Romanians are like, especially at this point in history. So I want my characters to depict this. Um, so not those idealized Romanian peasants. We are in a setting where, for instance, it was customary for within a family, it was customary for the man and the sons to eat first, and the woman, the mother, would not even sit with them at the table, and she would eat the leftovers, if any. So it was also perfectly fine for a husband to beat his wife to discipline her. Also, Roma people were slaves, and homosexuality was punished by death. So I think that there is no point in idealizing either social category. Um, Perhaps for this reason, my main characters, the four of them, are come from different social categories.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I think that, your work really does, challenge a lot of the assumptions that, this category of literature generally has and kind of puts all of these tropes on its head because, as we know from what you've shown us on Instagram, your work also has homosexuality, which is a taboo in this category of literature. And, in addition to black and white, like, the anti-black and white morality, not everyone is good who is supposed to be good, and not everyone who is supposed to be evil in this category of literature is evil. So can you tell us a little bit more about the characters and what kind of social categories they fall into?
Definitely. We have four main characters from whose point of view the story is written. First, we have boyar Amza Vidrashku, and he is, of course, a member of nobility. He is a boyar who ran away from home after he had some dissensions with his family, and who decided to change sides, if we can say. He was disappointed with the corruption that he saw within the ranks of nobility because of certain uh, tragic things that happened in his family. So he wanted to not be a part of that any longer. So he severs all ties with his noble family, and he runs into the woods to meet with other outlaws who are gathering there. Um, so the other two of the other main characters are the Roma siblings that we talked about, a girl and a boy, Narcisa and Murgu, who are also runaways. Like I said, Roma people were slaves at this time. They were slaves not to commoners. Commoners weren't supposed to own slaves, but boyars did, and churches, monasteries also had Roma people as slaves. And so, of course, segregation was very poignant at this time, and they of course, these two cultures were quite different at this time, and they were supposed to marry very early and have a lot of children, and this is what Narcisa has to go through. And already at 14, when we meet her, she has two children, but she was forced to run away from home um, because the boyar family that they were working for, um, the boyar, her master, wanted to have sexual relations with her, and her husband got very jealous. And after a series of arguments, um, her brother Murgu decided that they should run away together. So this is why when the story starts, these two children are hiding in the woods, and they've made a camp there. So when boyar Amza comes running from the authorities, from the militia, they help him hide and lose their tracks. So this is how these three met. Well, the fourth character that I'm going to portray, who is also a point of view character, is a priest, a peasant priest called Elizar, um, who, well, he gets into a lot of trouble, and he eventually has to run away as well, and he has to sort of join the outlaws. Um, these are my four characters.
Ah, I see. I think it's very interesting that Elizar, a priest, also becomes an outlaw in in his own way. And I wonder what causes him to become one of the outlaws.
Yes, yes, that's right. Well, he had his own trouble with authority, and he was, we can say, a sort of a revolutionary type of priest. So he was, well, I cannot really say that he was rallying the peasants for something, but he always, in his speeches, he always talks about social injustice and about uh, how Romanian peasants often have to suffer from because of the authorities, and he tries to educate them in their own flaws, but at the same time to teach them that they should learn to want more from life in a way. So he criticizes the ruling classes as well uh, because of trouble he had in his past with them when he was a child, when when in order to give taxes and to give food to the Turkish armies, the boyars were making the taxes higher and, like I said, torturing people who didn't pay. And his family sort of gets in the middle of this, even if his father was a priest as well. But maybe especially because he was a priest, he was a bit wealthier than other peasants, and so well, they get into trouble, and this is actually how he meets Amza, um, years before the story starts. So um, he becomes one of those who are very disgruntled about the situation in the country and repeatedly talks about it. And so he starts by well, hosting the outlaws in his church, we can say. The outlaws make donations to the church and give a lot, like I said, to the peasants and to the church, so they can hold the ceremonies. And they are in quite good relationships. And so, I mean, the church and the outlaws. And so, well, he could be accused of treason if anyone wanted to harm him. So, well, this is sort of what happens. He gets himself into a situation where the outlaws are followed by the militia again, and he sort of takes their side. I cannot say a lot more than this, but this is the main story. This is the main
Mm,
thing that happens.
I see. So how does he feel as a priest being labeled as an outlaw? Because generally speaking, priests are seen as very law abiding. But I would say that maybe I would wager a guess that because he's somewhat revolutionary, he kind of takes pride in it because he thinks that he's speaking out against injustices in the existing system.
Yes, I think to some extent he takes pride in it, but at the same time he doesn't like being on the other side of the law because um well, yes, as a priest, yeah, they were supposed to be law abiding, and I think that more often than not, in at least in Romanian history, the state worked hand in hand with the church, even if sometimes this was detrimental to the people because priests had a lot of knowledge about everyone, right? Because people would come and make confessions. So the authorities, if they wanted to gather dirt on someone, we can say they could always come to the priest, right? Because the priest knows everything that's going on in the village or in the city. So yes, at this he wasn't really supposed to side with with the people so much. He was supposed to be more law abiding, and a part of him has great qualms of conscience about the situation that he puts himself in. So I think he learns to be I mean, not to be proud, but to make the best of the situation that he is in. I
Hmm.
cannot say that he's proud. He's actually quite tormented by what he does. He does something which because he's a priest and he has all these values of goodness. He beats himself up about it very much. So I think he learns to make the best of it, and he keeps trying, and he keeps saying to himself that that it's for the best, and he is still a good person.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. So he's someone who does, in a way, still subscribe to what society thinks is good or bad because he still is affected by how he's defined as an outlaw, which is,
Yeah.
in contrast to some of the characters that we've talked about in previous episodes, like Ardayan and maybe even Lev, who don't really care what society would label them as because they have their own set of convictions. Or in the case of Ardayan, he has no convictions, so he doesn't care.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, they are on opposite sides of this. Elisar and someone like Ardayan. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Uh,
Hmm.
Elisar does care a lot about what people think and about what society thinks is good and bad. So of course he's quick to judge authorities when what they do when they do harm, but with more subtle things, yeah, I think sometimes there is a fight going on within him between what he feels is good and bad and what he was taught that is good and bad.
Hmm. I think he has to learn a lot of stuff about himself too, that questions what he was taught in his past about what is good versus bad. Because as you've revealed on Instagram, he does fall in love with another man. And not only is he a man, but he is also from another ethnic group, one that was stigmatized during that time because they were slaves. So yes, he is a Roma. the
Oh
person he
yes,
falls
yes.
in love with.
Yes, exactly. I think that Elisar is the character who does the most soul searching during the story, because I think that he was very much used to teaching other people how to lead their lives, but he didn't look at himself so much before the story starts, and so the events that take place force him to think about himself more, and uh, and in a way to think that he's very flawed, or to worry that he is more flawed than he thought he was, um, and finally coming to terms with all that. And definitely, not only does he join the Outlaws, in a way, because he is never really a part of the Outlaws, but he's forced to be with them for a while. So not only is he on the other side of the law, but he becomes conscious of his feelings for another man, which he always assumed that he was gay, but it was not confirmed to himself until he meets Murgu. And well, this is when he realizes that his worst fear was true in a way. So of course there is a fight within himself, because he doesn't feel that it is wrong, but he's afraid that he should feel that it's wrong.
Mm, that makes a lot of sense. So Elisar, he didn't really know that for sure he was gay. So does that mean that he was never attracted to women? So he suspected that he might be gay. So when he met Morgu, he's like, "Oh, I'm definitely gay." Is that how? Is that the process?
Well, yeah, this is the shortened version of it. Yeah. Um,
Ah, I see.
well, he was married. He was
Oh, he
married.
was. Okay.
Yeah, and his wife died. His wife died in childbirth, or after the child, after their child was born. And so well, he did love her to some extent, and the fact that it wasn't sexually attracted to her, he doesn't really think it's a bad thing, because well, he thinks that he is a highly moral person, and this is why he's just not interested in sex. So he isn't really conscious of that. I mean, he doesn't think that he doesn't realize that he doesn't like women in that way, but he he knows that well, he feels something for men, I guess. He's conscious that deep down he's sort of attracted to men, at least as much as he is to women. So but yes, it's never confirmed, because he never really fell in love with someone, with a man. And I think that what happens is he starts to compare what he feels for Murgu to what he felt for his wife, which is of course another great source of guilt for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's afraid that maybe he didn't love her as he should have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's definitely the character who has the most of the inner conflicts out of the four characters.
He definitely does. Is he one of the main characters of your cast?
Yes, yes. So the story is told from the point of view of these four characters. So basically, each chapter will be from the point of view of one of them. And of course, as the plot advances, maybe some of the events will intersect. So we will have scenes that are told uh, twice, from first from the point of view of one of the characters, and then from the point of view of another. And then not to mention that there are moments when these four characters aren't together, they take separate ways, especially Narcisa. She will be in a very different kind of setting, and each of them has their own adventures. So they will eventually intersect, but not in the beginning.
I see. Yeah, I assumed that they were actually together at the beginning and they went their separate ways, but it's actually the opposite way around.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. So, actually, the novel will be, I think, divided into three parts, because the first part is the one that I wrote a long time ago, which was meant to be a short story, but which I wanted to continue because I really like the characters and I really like the setting, and I wanted to write more about Romanian history. And I decided that instead of making another story in the same setting, why don't I take these characters and show what happens after the events in the short story? So this is basically how it begins. The first part of the story will have um, Amza, Murgu, and Narcisa in the story that in the premise that I talked about, when they meet with Amza, who is running in the woods, and the siblings help him get away from the militia. So after those events, 3 years pass, and Narcisa goes missing. So Murgu is desperate, and he goes in search of Amza. I won't say a lot about what happens at the end of the short story that I already have, but there was a bit of a conflict between Murgu and Amza, so they had an argument before they parted ways. And so Murgu is, of course, reluctant to seek him out, although he knows very well where Amza is all the time. Amza has become quite famous at this point. So Murgu knows where to find him if he really wants to, but he doesn't want to out of pride because of what happens between
Hmm.
them. So the only thing that could get him to seek him out again is when his sister goes missing, because he loves his sister very, very much, and he repeatedly says that he would do anything for her. So he knows that when she disappears, Amza is the only one who can help him find her, because of course he cannot go to the authorities. Not only are they Roma people, and the authorities don't really care what happens to Roma people, but they are runaway Roma people, which is, of course, they run away from their master and they become sort of independent. Like I said, Roma people are never independent at this point. So if they somehow run away, they become, or they can be confused as nomads, but the nomads belong to the prince. So they are basically the property of the state. So when a Roma person is not the property of a certain boyar or of a monastery, and they have documents to prove who they belong to, then they pass into the property of the state. So I cannot say that they are free. They're they're not really free. So if someone wants the authorities to look into their situation, it's of course not a good idea for that. But they do make a living by going to fairs. They belong to a category of Roma people who are bear tamers, and they have a bear called Sultana, who is a little female bear, and they go to fairs together, and she can dance, and Narcisa also can dance and sing, and Murgu plays a kobza, a lute instrument. So this is how they make a living.
Ah, I see. Oh, just to clarify, during this time period, which way of life was easier for the Roma people? Being owned by the states, or working at the monastery, or under the boyars?
I think that being nomad, because they could do pretty much whatever they wanted to. They could earn money however they wanted to, and they could go wherever they wanted, and they didn't have to ask for permission. But their status was a bit complicated because it wasn't really a problem if something hurt them. When they belong to a boyar and someone hurts them, they have to deal with the boyar. The boyar can be very upset because they were his employees, and the boyar can ask for compensation, and he has the power to punish the people who harm them. But if they are nomads, they also don't have protection. So their status is quite flimsy from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean that like so nomads are owned by the state? So does the state have any kind of ownership over them or not really? Like is it just in name or does it affect them in any way?
Yeah, they they still have the slave status. They are not allowed to own land, for example. This is what it basically means. And they can be, like I said, I don't know, killed or something at almost no cost. So their lives value a lot less. But um, yeah, this is what it means. But also, if they were to work for boyars, they can also earn something on the side if the boyar lets them. So
Oh, okay.
you can let them go to the fair if they want, and make shows and keep the money. So it basically depends on what kind of a master they have.
Mm-hmm.
If,
I
if,
see.
if the boyar is more permissive, then it's not. Well, I cannot say that it's not so bad, because obviously slavery is bad, but they had the possibility to do that.
Mm-hmm. So how did the Roma people become enslaved in the first place?
It is not really recorded how. At least in the documents that I read in Romania, it is assumed that they came on Romanian territory sometime in the 13th or 12th century, and they were enslaved ever since. I think it's difficult to imagine what that is like, but I don't even know how they could prove that someone was a Roma person
Mm-hmm.
from the appearance, but it's not always so apparent that they belong to different ethnicity. So I think for a modern person, it's quite difficult to understand what it's like. So whenever you see someone that sort of looks like a Roma person, then you say, okay, come here. You do what the state wants. The state can just do whatever they want with you. They can send you to work somewhere or whatever because you're a Roma person. So I think this
Oh.
is basically how it works.
But what if you don't really look that way? Because, there is a variation how a Roma person could look. So I guess those people can can slip past like detection and not be a slave anymore.
Well, I think so. If they manage to speak Romanian very well, well, like a Romanian, and wear Romanian traditional outfits, and be recognized by other people as Romanians, then yes, of course. A bit later than my story takes place, there are even documents that show how Roma people could ascend in society, and there was one of them who actually became a prince, sort of, at one point. So if a noble person were to marry them, but I'm not really sure at what point in time that happened compared to my story.
I see.
So
Hmm.
for some people, if you have Romanians to vouch for you that you are not Roma, then you can have as many, I don't know, opportunities in life as anyone else.
Oh, okay. And during this time period, did they speak Romanian at all, or was it just like broken and not very well, generally speaking?
I think they speak Romanian like an uneducated person because, of course, they don't have any access to education. But this is not so bad because Romanian peasants also have no access to education. So most of them are illiterate at this point. So there's not such a great difference, I think. But yeah, among them, they would, of course, speak in their own language. But yeah, they all of them could speak Romanian, but maybe like an uneducated Romanian.
I see. And So when by this, like, I don't know, in the modern time period, do Roma people in Romania still speak their own language, or is it like mostly just Romanian now?
Yes, some of them still do, especially in the more traditional communities. So there are people in certain communities who don't hold on to their traditions and who don't speak Romani at home. But there are also other people who still wear their traditional outfits everywhere, and their tradition even marriage from a very early age. And yeah, it's generally those people that still speak the language with one another. But of course, the language, after spending so much time in Romania, it also borrowed a lot of Romanian words, especially neologisms. So yeah, I assume it was the same back in 1790 something when my story takes place.
Mm-hmm.
There are really very, very few records, and there are no records from the point of view of Roma people and about the language of the Roma people. So everything is from the point of view of the few Romanian people who were literate, which is aristocracy and churches. And so, well, we don't really have a lot about them at this point in history.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense because, I think a lot of history is like this in general because most people throughout history were illiterate. So unfortunately, it was the people who had access to education who had a very limited worldview in their own perspective because they were usually higher up and biased worldview at that. So it was always them writing history. So, we see history through their eyes. So in a way, the history we see in textbooks and movies and such is not reflective of reality at times.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Hmm. So, what kind of themes are you exploring in your work?
Well, I think that the main themes are actually embedded in the title as well. So it is called Outlaws because even if, well, not, I have a group of outlaws, the haiduks that I talked about, who are literally that kind of Robin Hood kind of characters, but at the same time. Uh, all of my characters are in one way or another fighting against authority and going against several societal rules and struggling with that. So I think that this is the main theme because, like I said, um, only the Elisar, Murgo, and Narcisa are not really outlaws. They sort of join them because they have no other choice, because they are themselves marginalized, because they broke certain societal rules.
Hmm. I
So
see.
this reflects in a lot of branches of the characters' lives. Because first of all, Amza is a renegade nobleman. He's the one who had, well, pretty much everything one could want at that point in time, and he was privileged, but he gave up all that because he was tired of corruption. Well, this is the idealized way to put it. The more realistic way to put it, and the one that summarizes his character arc better, is that he it was more personal than that. He also did some things that he's really not proud of, and that will come back to haunt him. We can say that he also took advantage of his privileges quite a lot. And when something happens to him that makes him realize how corrupt those people are, he looks back to his past and realizes, I was one of those people. I also did those things.
Hmm.
So well, so in a way, he is a renegade uh, to nobility, but at the same time, he is not that heroic, uh, ideal kind of character. So he's
Mm-hmm.
not he does not break away from nobility because he was perfect and
Mm-hmm.
the others were flawed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Amza, and then we have Narcisa, who well, her choice of running away, I think it was the hardest because she had children. So in choosing to run away from her husband because of the uh, abuse, yeah, I think we can call it abuse. So because of the dissensions that happened in her family, he had to make the choice between staying with them and being unhappy there and being placed in that situation where the master can require again for her to have relations with him, and her husband will again be jealous. So choosing between staying in that situation or leaving her children behind. And so she chooses the latter. So this is her main problem. She has to live with that decision that she made. So she also did something that is very against I don't know, moral rules in a way. Um, Murgu, well, I think Murgu was the one who encouraged her to run away because he had run away from home months before that. He was already living alone at this point, and um, because he was because he was gay. So this is what it boils down to. There was a moment in his past when that became obvious because he had to marry when he was 14, and well, he does marry, and the marriage is not consummated, and uh, he has a crush on the girl's brother, and that sort of comes out. And well, that's not the moment when he runs away from home, but he is. Well, there is a great scandal between their families, and he becomes sort of the black sheep of his family. So he never really felt at home with his brothers and parents, and he always says that Narcisa was his favorite sibling and the only one who ever understood him. And it goes the same for her. She also finds comfort in Murgu. They are the youngest of all the siblings, and so they always had a more special relationship with each other. So when she marries and goes away, and he learns the things that happened to her, he's very very upset and he wants to make justice for her. But once that isn't possible because his family is sort of against it, that's the moment when he chooses to run away. And he spends a while alone and then decides that he cannot leave his sister in that situation. So he goes to her and he says, "Let's run together." And they run. So
Mm-hmm.
Murgo also does things against societal norms because, in a way, he renounces Roma lifestyle and Roma traditions, but he doesn't do that in order to become a Romanian. So he's always between worlds as well, not to mention his sexuality, which is a very great problem in a Romanian context and in a Roma context. Uh, Maybe more so. Yeah, definitely more so. So yeah, he's not really accepted because of all these situations, and then we have the priest who, well, like I said, he's a revolutionary sort of, and or he can be seen by authorities as someone who instigates the masses, and at the same time, well, also his sexuality is another thing that brings him outside of societal norms. So, like I said, it was punishable by death, but actually, this was not really implemented in most cases. So even if it was proven that you did that, you're probably just told to stop, and that's that. Only if you really upset someone high up, that is when the punishment was actually carried out.
Hmm. Exactly. Or you ended up sexually assaulting someone, right?
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
sexually assaulting like a prince or something.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So only if you do something against someone that is high up. If I think that if you sexually assault a peasant, it's not really a problem
No, no, no.
because their lives weren't really valued.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, it depends who you anger.
Hmm. But if it's just two peasants doing it, right, no one would really care because it doesn't involve anyone who's important.
Yeah, well, society would care a lot. They would definitely be ostracized within the community, and they would probably just be beaten by other peasants. So, so
And that's true. But I meant like if it was kept private, like and someone found out, but like just one person and like they didn't really know those people, it wouldn't really affect them and they wouldn't be
yeah.
executed.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So it's not a problem to the authorities unless you offend someone who's really high up. But even if you don't have to deal with authorities, you still have to deal with the opinion of your neighbors, which is often aggressively shoved down your throat, you know, so, especially in these rural areas. And well, yeah, I can say that the situation sadly hasn't changed all that much in nowadays Romania either. So when it comes to acceptance and to keeping your nose in your own business and not in other people's business, yeah, it hasn't changed all that much.
So, what is the main difference in approach in terms of writing, characters, and structure between Outlaws and your other project, Sons of Disobedience / Lucky Wolf?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Um, well, first of all, the setting is very, very different, and uh, I know it sounds weird, but I'm so much more familiar to the setting of medieval Scandinavia because I've spent a lot of time reading about it and imagining the world and building characters in that world and with those kinds of mentalities. And so going from that to a society that is much more recent, but at the same time, in many ways, more rigid. Yeah, it's quite a big difference. It's quite a big difference. I'm excited because I can have guns, so this is really fun. But of course, they had those kind of flintlock muskets, so just one bullet, and then you basically have to throw it away. If you're in a gunfight, you won't have time to reload. So yeah, but anyway, they have guns, and this is really fun for me. Other than that, well, structurally, yeah, it's very different because I have the point of view of more characters, and the plot is structured differently, and it will be more dynamic because in Sons of Disobedience I have three parts. So the parts of each characters are, well, they don't alternate. Here it will be more dynamic because of the alternate chapters. And like I said, when the characters take separate ways, what happens and the setting itself will be very different from one chapter to the other. So maybe it is similar in a way to the structure of Lucky Wolf, where I had one chapter taking place in the present day and one chapter taking place in Eolf's past. So maybe it is a bit similar to that with great leaps between one chapter to the other,
Hmm.
which I think adds a more dynamic pace.
Hmm.
And also, it's well, Sons of Disobedience was conceived as a novel right from the start. Whereas this one was first meant to be a short story, like I said, and then I had to rewrite it. And of course, the process of writing a short story is very different in terms of character building. So well, I knew a lot of the things about the background and the personalities of the characters, but that story only took place over one single night. So I only focused on the things that happened during that night. And well, there is only so much you can show during one night, because of course they talk about their past, they think about their past, but only a few things will come up. For example, in the Outlaws short story, I what I tried to do was sort of give a twist to the characters, because the reader, as the story progresses, the reader will be under the impression that Amza is the main character, because he's just that kind of person, the Robin Hood kind of hero, or this is how it seems in the very beginning. So the reader is led to think that, oh, we are going to find out why this guy ran away from home and what he plans to do and all that. But as the story progresses, you realize that the main character is actually Murgu, and it's rather Amza who is the the vehicle through which the reader meets and understands Murgu. So he's basically the protagonist over there. So we don't really know anything about Amza. We end up knowing, oh, absolutely nothing. We don't know why he ran away. We sort of know where he wants to go, but we don't really see him getting there. So here, unfortunately, I have to give that up. I really like that kind of structure. I wanted there to be a twist. I wanted the character to be, well, not be misled in that way. And I don't think the character is disappointed that they don't learn about Amza, because Murgu is so much more interesting, right? So, but here, yeah, I will show about Amza's background and past. So I did a lot of brainstorming about him as well. And also, we are going to see much more about Narcisa, who didn't appear all that much in the story. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to have this kind of structure. Well, we have one chapter from the point of view of each character, because I didn't want Narcisa to be in the background again. Of course, that was a short story. It only had like 2 pages. So there are only uh, 3 scenes where she actually makes a difference. But in those scenes, she was quite an out of the ordinary person, I think. This is what I try to show her. So how I try to show her. So I really wanted to show more about her, because her character arc is also very interesting, with the sacrifices that she had to make, and also with what happens to her when she disappears. I won't really say what happens to her, but it will be exciting, and it will involve herself and 13 peasant girls. So yeah,
Mm.
that will be one of the several storylines that we are going to follow.
I wonder what she does with the peasant girls.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and it will be the part of the story which is very different from the others, because the setting will be very different.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm really excited to write more about her.
How long will the novel be compared to Sons of Disobedience? Is it as long as Sons of Disobedience is planned to be, or is it shorter?
No, I think it's shorter. It's somewhere between Lucky Wolf and Sense of Disobedience. Maybe it will be about as long as Lucky Wolf. It's difficult to say, because Lucky Wolf turned out quite long, considering that I only have 2 characters who are always together. So I don't really know how long it will take for me to write 4 different point of view characters with well, nearly 4 different stories. So maybe it will turn out much longer than I'm expecting right now. I have no idea. But I don't think it will be as long as Sons of Disobedience, because this is based on one event, I think. So there's one main event that happens, whereas Sons of Disobedience has to illustrate the entire process of conversion to Christianity. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that it will be shorter than Sons of Disobedience. I hope so, because I've been working on Sons of Disobedience for 10 years, so I'm not going to spend 10 years on this story. Hopefully I will write it faster.
For Sons of Disobedience, is most like, you said that you have to spend a lot of time talking about the conversion to Christianity. So that's a lot of political stuff that Ingvar will be involved in, right?
Oh yes, yes,
Mhm.
definitely,
So are
definitely.
those parts, do you think, are the hardest to write as opposed to other stuff like, Aiden and Ingvar communicating to each other? Is that easier than the political stuff?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah, the political stuff is the hardest thing to do, because of course it has to be seamlessly integrated into the story. I cannot copy paste what actually happened. So it has to feel natural. It has to be integrated. So yeah, this is very difficult to do. I have to show how those all those intrigues between characters happen, how the king has to turn people against each other in order to divide and conquer. So I cannot say, oh look, that the king wants to divide and conquer. I think this is one of the main problems I had with the first draft of the novel. I didn't insist enough on the political aspects of the story. I sort of summarized them and then swept them under the rug and just focused on people talking and like, and by people I don't mean I don't know, rulers or something. It's just Ingvar and Aiden and Ranveig, so that was really fun, but it doesn't have to be only about that. and
Hmm.
and I also don't have to make or mustn't make pages where I just write, oh, this is what happened in this month of this year, the king did this and that. So not textbook page. So yeah, it's safe to say that that is the most difficult part. But the political aspect is also the most difficult part of Outlaws as well, because unfortunately this is how I made the plot as well. It's a lot of politics involved, of course, especially in Amza's part of the story. The rest of the characters aren't all that involved in it, but um, Amza carries the political ideas, and the main plot, we can say, the main plot that deals with corrupt authorities, Ottoman invasions, and all that. So we are mostly going to find that out in his part, because he's going to talk to boyars, and yeah, so there will be a lot of politics in that. Uh, that will certainly be difficult for me.
Hmm. I can imagine. Yeah, I agree. I think in historical fiction, integrating a lot of the facts with your characters and how they develop is one of the more difficult things.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Hmm.
It of course depends on how extended you want the plot to be, and what scale the plot is. Because if
Hmm.
you're just talking about the life of a family, for example, maybe you don't need to get all that much. I mean, yeah, of course you will portray the fact that life is difficult, maybe authorities are corrupt, there is famine and all that, a bit about the laws, right? But you don't have to go all that much into politics. But when you make one of your characters a nobleman who ran away because of corruption, and who now has to deal with other noblemen, of course a lot of things will come up, a lot about the political situation, and it's a very very chaotic time. So there's a lot of research to be done, and to this adds the cultural elements, the cultural research that I have to do with Roma people. And so Murgu and Narcisa's part of the story are also not devoid of research, not at all. So yeah, perhaps Elisar is the safest and the easiest to write.
I see. And he has the most conflicts, which I think is a theme that you have in a lot of your stories, inner conflicts, just like Ingvar.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right. And another theme that I have is religious professionals. If I can use this term to define people like Aidan, Valdis, Eof, and now we have Elisar. So yeah, this is another priest, but a very, very different one. Um,
How different do you think Aydin and Elisar are in terms of personality and their approach to religion?
this is a great question. Well, even if Aidan lives 8 centuries earlier than Elisar, he's much more knowledgeable about, uh, I don't know, anything related to culture, science, literature, and all that, because he has the upbringing of a nobleman, and in a time when the difference between literate people and illiterate people was very, very big. So Aiden has a vast knowledge about everything, whereas Elisar is just a country priest. So he has the education of a peasant mostly. So he reads, but he only reads religious writing. So he basically reads the Bible, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh,
And
okay.
he tries to interpret it however he thinks is right. So there's definitely a difference in terms of education, which also means that Aiden is more open minded when it comes to a lot of things, including fate and science and morality, whereas Elisar doesn't really have the basis. He is an open minded person, but he's not sure if that is uh, good or bad. So
Mm.
he sometimes struggles between thinking, oh, I'm a good person because I'm open-minded, or I am flawed because I'm not supposed to be thinking these things. As a priest, I have this moral requirement to not be as lenient in certain directions. So yeah, and also well, Romanian people are very superstitious. So my Romanian characters will be, I think, more superstitious than my medieval ones in certain respects. And also Romanian people are still very religious, I think. So well, these kind of phrases like God forbid, God help, and things like that, and oh my God, these are met in Romanian speech even nowadays a lot more often than in English. For example, and I'm planning to have the way my characters speak reflect this.
I see. So, to clarify, Aiden, what kind of Christian is he? Is he technically a Catholic? But because this was before the Reformation, right?
Yeah. I think we can say that he was a Catholic. Yeah.
I see. And Elisar is Orthodox, correct?
Orthodox.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Aiden is, well, he's more philosophical and more skeptical um, because of uh, uh, because of the knowledge and the things that he read and his relation to science, but most of all because of his experiences. So Elisar isn't really placed in a situation where he has to deal with people of a different faith so closely as Aiden does. So I think in these ways, Aiden is a lot more. Um, he retains that kind of philosophical skepticism that Elisar doesn't really have. So
I
he never
see.
questions anything, and none of my Romanian characters ever question uh, divinity. What they do question is um, the way that people interpret it. So maybe the institution of the church.
Mm-hmm.
If this is one thing that they question, but never the existence of divinity as it is portrayed in the Bible. So they none of them ever doubt anything that is
Oh,
written in the
okay.
Bible. You
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah. So this is one difference in terms of their approach to religion.
Does the fact that Aiden is sorry, not Orthodox, does the fact that Elisar is Orthodox versus Aiden is Catholic also impact how they view religion, respectively?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe, yeah, I think so. I think so. Although I'm not sure. I mean, um, the difference, the timeline is so different, and um, I don't really know how much Catholicism in the 10th century compares to what it is now or what it was
Mhm.
in the late 18th century. So I'm not really sure, but but generally Orthodoxism nowadays is a lot more rigid than Catholicism, and I can well say that from my experience because I'm sort of both. I mean, in my family, I have both Catholics and Orthodox. So I yeah, I think I can safely say that they are much more rigid in terms of morality and what is good and how things should be done.
Mm-hmm. Because Orthodox is more traditional in a sense. While
Yeah.
I think in the 20th century, the Catholic Church has undergone a lot of renovation, so to speak, especially after World War II, I believe. I think the Pope, he issued something that kind of quote unquote updated Catholicism.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. While Orthodoxy didn't change that
Mm-hmm.
much at all, and it has taken pride in not changing it. So if it is like this in the 21st century, I imagine that in the setting of Outlaws, it was like that all the more.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, well, they were justifying the slavery of Roma people through the Bible. They say at this point, and it is documented that they explain it. So priests would say that it is written in the Bible that Roma people should be slaves, which is of course a gross
Mm-hmm.
misinformation. Not once do they say that in the Bible, but they well, this is what priests in late 18th century would teach their congregation.
I
So
see.
yeah.
I think the same thing happened in the United States. You know, a lot of the early founding fathers in America, like Thomas Jefferson, they were also very Christian, but they said that, you know, African Americans needed to be slaves or they were meant to be slaves because it was said so in the Bible. I think that I don't know if they used the same verse, but in the States, they used this verse that was like, I think it was the sons of Noah, I think, and one of them was dark skinned. I think he was Ham or something, and they said he was
Ham,
cursed or something.
exactly.
Yeah, so then they had to enslave his descendants or something.
Exactly, Yeah, it was also Ham that is supposed to be the forefather of the Roma people. And so
Wow, but they're completely
Ham had
different. I
a
mean,
lot of children from
yeah,
a lot of different places of the world.
yeah. Yeah. So they interestingly use the
Yeah.
same Bible verse to justify that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I couldn't help it. It does come up between Murgo and Elisar. They have to talk about this because
Oh, please do. It's
it's just too
crazy.
outrageous.
It
And
is,
someone
yeah.
like Murgu, who is always very I don't know, pissed off about everything and um eager to get into fights even even if only verbal fights. He has to notice that, because however uneducated he is, he's a very clever person, and of course he notices that. And yeah, they have to have that discussion.
Well, Murgu is a little bit like Joel then. He likes to have these little verbal fights.
Oh yeah, exactly, exactly. We never really compared or imagined how your characters would interact with the outlaw ones, but I think this would be really interesting. Murgo and Joel, yeah, I think they would have a lot of things in common. I actually think that, and also they would both fight for the rights of working classes or for lower classes who are marginalized in different aspects of society. So yeah, maybe they would have a lot of interesting things to discuss, but at the same time I think there would be a lot of arguments between them, because Murgo would definitely be one of those people who would tell him, shut up, you have no right to talk about this. What do you know about the life of Roma people and for factory workers? Are you a factory worker? No, then shut up and keep your opinions to yourself.
Oh my God, that's going to be hilarious. We need to see what happens in The
Yeah,
Sims when they meet.
yeah, exactly. I know.
Yeah. How about Ardayan? How would Morgu see Ardayan?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a difficult question. Um, well, well, he would definitely not like him, but well,
Why would he not like him? I'm just curious.
um, well, basically, Murgu doesn't really like anyone. I mean, even I don't know, unless he sort of finds him attractive, like I don't know, physically, he wouldn't really like him. He only likes people who are kind to him, and I don't think Dayan would be kind and affectionate towards him. He would really have no reason to be like that. And so unless he was really friendly and really warm, and make him feel appreciated, unless it's that, Murgo would probably hate him, because he basically hates everyone. I mean, not really hates, but he's really suspicious of everyone. And this is the only thing that wins him over. And this is what happens with Amza, and this is what happens to Elisar as well. He doesn't get along with anyone else. Um, so yeah, and Ardayan really would not be that, would he? What would he think of Murgo?
Nothing. I guess if he doesn't say anything, he's not really going to provoke him. He's way too young for him to really interact with anyways. I mean, I think he generally tends to provoke people who are his age or a little bit older.
Yeah, I know. So I think they would just ignore each other.
But Ardayan also says he's fighting for workers' rights and
Mm.
stuff, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So from this point of view, yeah, but maybe it would be the same thing. Like if you were to speak about Roma people, Murgo would also say, "Are you Roma? No, then what do you know?"
that's true. I mean, it can be very irritating when some people do that. They just speak on behalf of all groups as if they understand everything, but every group has its own problems. And when you overgeneralize, sometimes some issues are just brushed under the rug.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And well, not everybody has an issue with this. Murg is one of the people who does have an issue, and he never misses the chance to point it out. Maybe it's I mean, it's definitely also because he is generally very pissed off about life and about the things that happened to him personally. So he's also biased. He's actually a very nice guy, but he's been through some things that make him pissy. I don't know.
I see. Speaking of religion, in our next episode, we're going to be talking about one of my characters, the dean of the Faculty of Law of Sam's Law School, who is also very religious. But unlike Elisar and Aiden, he is more like he's a modern type of Christian, but a very strict kind of Christian too. And he's Protestant in contradiction to Orthodox and Catholic. So that's going to be a little bit different.
That would be so interesting. I cannot wait to talk about the dean. with you because I know that he has undergone a lot of development recently, and I'm very eager to learn more about it. And yeah, definitely, since religion is an important theme in my works, I'm also really interested to see how you portrayed it through, well, or how the dean sees it.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just give a little bit away just to kind of, give people a little bit idea of what we're going to be talking about in our next episode.
Oh yes,
So
please.
the dean, he was raised in a very Protestant family, and they really believed in using religion or their interpretation of the Bible to fix social problems like homelessness, slums, and all of those things. But unfortunately, they come off in a way that's very judgmental because during that time period, there was something called the Third Great Awakening in American Protestant circles, which was basically, very focused on morality and regulating what was okay and what was not okay. So this is why there was prohibition in the 1920s, because of these people from the Third Great Awakening, because they thought that by banning certain things, you can get people to act, quote unquote, more morally. So this is why the dean is so authoritarian, because this is how he believes he can help society to become better.
Well, yeah, this is really interesting. Banning things to make things better. That, well, yeah, history has proven how good that works.
Yeah. And basically, his dad is a post millennialist who always is talking about the second coming. So, from the research I've done, some of these Protestants, from the Third Great Awakening, they believe that Jesus is not going to come back to earth until people have fixed up a lot of their problems. So, this is why he and all of these people in this social movement are always pushing for things to be banned so he can help fix society and, prepare for Jesus to come back.
Oh, I see. I see. This is really interesting. This is
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to learn more about it and compare to maybe Elisar's view or generally Romanian Orthodox view in my setting,
Hmm. I
which is also
think
very strict.
hmm I think it's mostly American Protestants from my experience and research that are obsessed with the second coming, because I haven't really seen other types of Christians talk about it that much, right?
Yeah, 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 that's right. That's right.
Hmm. So Aiden and Elisar never think about the second coming, right?
No, I don't think so. Especially not in those terms, not in we have to prepare the world for a second coming or there won't be a second coming. No, I don't think that there's ever talk about it in
Hmm.
Orthodox religion.
So it just will happen one day, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. So yeah, thank you for coming on and telling us so much about your story. I mean, I cannot wait for it. And when is it going to be on Tapas? Maybe in 2021?
Yes, yes, I'm really planning to start it in 2021. I already have a few chapters. Well, I have quite a lot written from it already, but I just have the first, I don't know, 30 pages or something. So yeah, I hope I will in a few months start posting it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much. And happy Halloween, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And happy Halloween to you all.
Happy Halloween. Bye.